Hey fellow dog lovers, Rich here with Dogs with Rich. Today, this video is going to answer a question I get asked all the time. And that is, what training tools are available to me to help me with my dog training needs, as well as what are my favorite tools to use when I'm helping a client with their behavioral issues. We're going to talk about leashes all the way up to different types of correction collars and those types of things. So let's get started. We're going to start with leashes. In Perfect Pooch, what we like to use is oftentimes we deal with very stubborn dogs. So when we are taking them for walks, learning how to walk them properly on a leash, I like these leashes because this is a 6-foot nylon leash, but it also has an extra handle. This handle being right above the buckle gives us the ability to be able to hold on so that we can really have good control over them, especially if we're trying to work with aggression, or if we're trying to work with a dog that's pulling, or having to work to try and control those dogs. They do make some of these that are bungee. I do not like those because you do not have full control, in my opinion, of those dogs. So unless you are working with a dog that is really well behaved and really well social, I prefer to stay away from the bungee leashes. Next thing we're going to talk about is the Haltis and the gentle leader. Both of them are designed essentially to stop dogs from pulling. And these are not tools that will stop your dog permanently from pulling. These are band-aids to stop them pulling when they are wearing these tools. The way that these basically work is, you can see this design like this. This part is going to go over your dog's muzzle, and this is going to go over the back of the head. This specific one is the gentle leader. You will then clip your leash to this buckle here, and when your dog is moving forward and they start to pull, this will turn and twist the head towards you, which will make it uncomfortable to pull and then cause the dog to slow down. The Haltis is essentially going to be the same thing. The main difference, as you'll notice with this design, is the muzzle goes through here, back of the head through here, but it's got this extra piece right here that's going to basically hang down where the muzzle is. With this, what's nice is it has a clip that clips onto the collar. Just in the event the dog slips out of this or pulls it off, you will still have your dog because this will be clipped to the collar. The other thing that I like about this is if we are dealing with a dog that gets a little rambunctious, or we need to kind of control them, by pulling up on this like this, it will close the mouth because it hangs down around the mouth, and you can pull it straight up and look straight down at them, make eye contact with them, and tell them to knock it off. When you're using these, the only things that you'll need to be concerned with is with the Haltis, because these pieces hang down around where the mouth is. You want to be mindful that sometimes the dogs, when you're not paying attention, can get them into their mouth and they can chew through it. If they chew through this, the collar is going to be ruined. But these are both, remember, band-aids for the pulling. So if the only issue that you've got is that they pull, then these are fine. And these are not considered corrective collars. Although they try and modify behavior, what they're doing is band-aiding it, and it's not used for issuing corrections. The next collar we're going to talk about is called the Martingale. The Martingale is essentially a nylon collar that has, in this case, a chain, or you'll see sometimes a nylon loop through here. You'll clip your leash to this, and when you pull on it, it gets slightly tighter. Now this is designed to stop dogs from being able to back out of their collar. So when we have our leash clipped on this, if this is sized correctly, the dog starts to try and back out of the collar. This will tighten behind the ears and prevent them from being able to escape. If this is going to be fitted correctly, when you put this on, you want to have 2 or 3 links like this, so that you can pull, and if they pull, it'll get a little bit tighter. Once these metal rings like this touch, then it is essentially the same thing as a nylon collar. And it will not get any tighter, and if the dog is able to slip out at that point, they will. These, you do want to make sure that you size them correctly, because you'll notice the thickness of the nylon. Here is a small one. Although the small one does get very big, this is very thin, so you want to be mindful of the collar starting to kind of dig in, especially if you have a dog that might be pulling while you're using this. This is oftentimes used with rescues, because obviously the rescues don't want to lose their dogs, so they use these a lot of the time. In behavioral training, we like to use these with our puppies or with our very sensitive dogs, because if you're using this and you have your leash on this, for those that have been shown how to do leash corrections, If you issue a quick pop and release with this, you do get that bite effect that we were looking for when we're issuing leash corrections, and so you do get a mild one with this. With this, the collar is made of nylon, so a lot of the energy is absorbed into the collar, and with this being a 1/2 inch thick collar, it does help to also spread the pressure around on the dog's neck. So these are great for dogs that are either sensitive, or if you are just looking for something to walk your dog with and your dog is a good walker and you're just looking for something that the dog is not going to back out of. These are also great to use on puppies. Next thing we're going to talk about is a slip lead. Slip leads are also used by rescues, and this is what basically a slip lead is. Sometimes it's the entire leash, or sometimes it's just the piece that looks like this. Basically, the way this works is you're going to push it through like this. This will go around your dog's neck, and basically as you pull, it gets tighter. Usually in a rope form like this, or sometimes it's in a little thin leash. These are often used by rescues or by animal hospitals to be able to move the dogs back and forth. These will ensure that the dogs do not get out of the collar, because it will tighten if they try and back out. And you can also get a little bit of a bite correction too if you're looking to use it for that as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the chain. I like to call them neck chains, but the more common name is going to be the choke chain. The choke chain, the key with the choke chain is that this is a tool that is not designed to apply pressure to the dog for extended period of time. For example, if they're pulling, so that it becomes too painful for them to pull. If somebody's dog is dragging themselves or dragging the humans down the street using one of these corrective collars, whether it's the chain or whether it's the pinch collar, that tool is not being used correctly. That is not what that tool is for. What this tool is for giving us the ability to issue what we call a bite correction. So in the dog world, if a dog wants to correct another dog, they're going to issue a bite correction. So you've probably seen dogs where they'll sometimes give a lip curl or sometimes they'll growl. That's their version of, say, like a verbal correction. And if the other dog doesn't heed to that, then the next step to enforce their rule or to enforce whatever it is that they're trying to would be to issue a bite correction. The bite correction is not designed to inflict a wound or designed to cause damage to the other dog. What it's designed to do is to enforce a rule or to set a boundary. So what we've done in the behavioral world is we've created tools so that we can use these tools to help create that bite to the neck shoulder area where another dog may target another dog when issuing them a correction. So when we have these on and we issue them their little bite correction and a little pop like that, that's essentially what we're doing. So when we do use these tools, it's important that we do not maintain tension, because yes, they do cause a choking effect. Because this is made of metal, we get much more of a bite effect than we do, say, with the Martingale. And depending on how thick the chain is going to depend on how much pressure it kind of spreads over the neck. Sometimes though, with dogs who have more sensitive necks or more sensitive throats, using these can cause them to cough, and so we'll oftentimes look for different alternatives if that is the case. And there are breeds that you cannot use these corrective collars on. For example, you can't use the Martingales, and you can't use the chains or even the pinch collars on, for example, miniature dachshunds or Chihuahuas, because of the anatomy of their throat. They can't handle the pressure on their neck. If you have any questions, consult with a trainer or consult with your veterinarian if you are able to use a corrective collar. The key with the chain that's important to understand is the chain works better one way than the other. And what I mean by that is if your leash is attached here, basically the way we're going to set this up is hangs like this. We're going to drop it through the bottom hoop, and that's what creates our loop. When we're using this, it is important that it goes on that one way if you're, say, for example, you're taking your dog for a walk, because it's going to release better one way than the other. So if you notice, if it sits like this and I give a correction and I release it, I get a nice release. But if the dog crosses over on me, I give that correction, I don't get that same release. And the reason why is because what we're looking for is for gravity to be able to help you with the release. So to make sure that it's fitted correctly, see this, the loop that's dangling, we want to make sure that that's dangling in between you and your dog. So if your dog is walking on your left, for example, it would look like this, so that I can issue corrections like this. If the dog is walking on the right, it would look like this. If you're not sure about it, there is a trick. So for example, if you walk your dog on the right and you hold it up like this and spin it around as if you're about to put it over their neck. If you create the letter lowercase q, so see how this makes a lowercase q, straight line here, the q here. If you make a lowercase q, and then you open it up and you slide it over your dog's neck, it will be set up for the right. If you make a letter P, so for you to see here is a letter P, and you're holding it and you make the letter P so you can see it, open it up and slide it over your dog's head, it will be set up for use on the left. So this is an example of kind of a medium chain. I think it's, they just list it as a medium-sized chain, and this would be an example of a heavy chain. And the medium chains do issue more of a bite correction. The larger chains are going to have a little less bite in them when we're issuing the corrections. So that is the chain, and remember the P or the Q depending on which side you're going to be walking your dog. And remember, again, when we're using these, we do not maintain tension on the leash, and because these do cause a choking effect. And if you are using these, make sure that your dog always has supervision whenever they are wearing them. All right, we are going to talk about one of the more controversial collars now, and this is called the pinch or the prong collar. Now, the pinch or the prong collar looks like this. Sometimes this is made of chain, and sometimes it's made of nylon like the ones that we use. The key with this collar is the fact that these prongs are bent. So you notice these prongs are bent. So what happens is you'll notice it's the same design as our martingale. The key with this, unlike the chain, is that it can be used forwards, backwards, and in any direction. It doesn't matter, you just basically get to slide it on. These ones have a buckle, so when you clip the buckle like this, it opens up so you can slide it over your pup's neck, clip the buckle, and you're going to attach your leash to the ring. The way you can size these is you're able to take links out. You just disconnect them like this, add or subtract links depending on what you need, and then you just fit them back together, push them in. If you have a collar where that is how you're putting it on and off, keep in mind you are weakening that link, and I have seen them where they will fall apart while you're walking and your dog becomes off leash. The nice thing about this kind is that this opens up here with the nylon, and when you open it up like this, you can slide it over, and then you are not weakening the links in your pinch collar. So going back to these prongs being bent, the reason these prongs are bent is because when you pull to issue a correction, these prongs come together like this and they pinch. And so these are not stabbing your dog in the neck. Although it does look like it is, I promise you that it is not. What these are doing there is they're coming together and they are pinching. So that's why it is called the pinch collar. These tips are dulled, so they are not sharp at all. If you are concerned about it, then they do sell rubber tips that you can buy that you're able to put onto this. It will dampen your correction slightly, but you will still get that same pinching effect. So by all means, if you are concerned about it, put these on, and then you can try both ways to see the difference that you get. The main difference between this and the reason why these are such effective tools is because these provide quite a bit more of a correction for less effort. So if you think of the chain, for example, as giving you a metaphorical bite to the neck or shoulder area coming from you so that you can correct the dog the way they're programmed to be corrected. What this does is it kind of adds teeth to your metaphorical bite. And so if we have really stubborn dogs, if we have really headstrong dogs, really dominant dogs that we're trying to shape their behavior with, then these can be a very valuable tool. And if you've never had to use one of these or you've never used one before, try and hold judgment, because these can be a very valuable tool when used correctly in being able to balance and help shape your dog's behavior. Because when we are shaping a dog's behavior, the key in behavioral training is to have a balance of rewards and consequences. If they make the wrong decision to do something, for example, they don't sit, if you tell them to sit, we issue them a correction, say for example, a verbal correction. If they then sit, we then praise them. And so what this does is this helps to enforce a dog that is very stubborn or very headstrong or very dominant, who is refusing to follow their human or their pack leader. And what this does is this helps us be able to equalize the level of correction that we're able to give. Because sometimes we've got very large dogs who are very strong or very, very physically strong and have a high pain tolerance. And then we have sometimes pretty small handlers. And so I like to call these equalizers because these will help equalize the control as we're using that. Remember though, these are just tools. And so it is not the tool that is changing the behavior, it is the person using the tool. So if you don't know how to use these tools, please make sure you seek professional help with a trainer, and the trainer will help you be able to use these. If you are taking a course, for example, in a basic obedience class that advertises that it is all positive reinforcement, these will most likely not be allowed in the class. The main difference between positive reinforcement is that they don't allow corrections in the class. They're trying to make everything positive. They're trying to use just strong incentives to create that behavior, and the behavior being the sit or the down. Where these come in is when we have dogs who are in altered states of mind. So for example, if we have dogs that are getting pretty aggressive, or if we have dogs that are very headstrong and they're not really interested in what it is that you're working with, for example, in the obedience class. And oftentimes when you take a dog outside of the home, the hierarchy of what's important to them, for example, the treats, starts to lower, and then that's why treats become less effective. Because once you get outside, smells are more important, people are more important, socializing with other animals are more important, chasing is more important. Everything, checking their P-mail is more important than your treats. So working inside the home, you'll find that the treats are very effective, but then if you take them to the park, you'll find that the dog might not even be interested in treats. So when you take your dog to a group class, oftentimes you're going to find that you struggle to control them. And so this is a different type of training than all positive reinforcement. This is a type of training where we are shaping a dog's behavior. So it's behavioral training by having that balance of rewards and consequences, shaping how they make their decisions on what it is that they're going to do based on that balance of rewards and consequences. Consequences being corrections and rewards being primarily gentle praise, but we can also use things such as treats. We can use the reward of participation, and we can use other types of rewards. The reward of greeting, for example, if they're super excited to see somebody and to greet them, whether you're at a pet store or something like that, or if it's somebody who's come over to say hi, you have a very strong motivator, which is the greeting. And so you can use that to help make them earn that, so that you can use that to shape their behavior. These two, you want to make sure that you size them correctly. So this is a pretty small one. This is a 14-inch. This would be used for a fairly small, medium small to small dog. As they get bigger, so this is a 20-inch. This would be more for, say, like a dog, medium to large dog, so like a German Shepherd, and then they make them bigger than this too. Just be mindful if you do get one of these and you commit to trying out and using a pinch collar. If you get a small one for a large dog, it's going to be much less effective. That's why they have them sized out so you have bigger ones for bigger dogs, because as these get smaller, the pinch is going to be less and less strong and will become less and less effective. So now we're going to talk about shock collars. So these are called shock collars, or more commonly called electronic collars, and they issue what we refer to as stimulations. Oftentimes they will come with a remote control, or you can get the kind that are just bark collars, which are specifically for dogs that you're trying to get them to stop barking. If you get the kind that stops barking, so it's the bark collar, basically it has an on and off switch, and basically has a level so that you pick what level you want the stimulation to be issued. Keep in mind, you get what you pay for with electronic collars. The thing to keep in mind with bark collars is that bark collars go off from the vibration that is coming from the environment and that they're feeling with the collar. So if you get a cheaper model, a dog that's next to the dog wearing the collar can set the collar off and cause the stimulation to happen. If you get the more expensive brands, they will have algorithms built into them, which they say will detect the dog that is wearing the collar to issue the barks, as opposed to a dog that's maybe standing next to them. The thing to keep in mind with bark collars is if you buy the cheap ones, oftentimes they will just issue stimulation after stimulation, and they will elevate the level of stimulation until the dog stops barking. Problem with that is if you get the better brands, for example, they will have a 30-second delay in between the stimulations. The reason we have that 30-second delay is because if you put this on your dog and leave, and then your dog barks, and then it gets stimulated with the collar, if it starts to panic, because it doesn't know what that was or where it came from, and it starts to scream, a cheaper collar is going to continue to issue stimulations. It's going to send your dog into a panic, and when you come home, your dog might be shivering and shaking underneath the table. That does sound horrible, and that can be horrible, and so that's why if you are going to commit to trying to use an electronic collar for a bark collar, I highly recommend spending the money to get one. They're not that expensive, even if you get one from a good brand. So the brand that we tend to use, and they are not sponsoring this video, is Dogtra, D-O-G-T-R-A. Any collar you get from them is going to be high quality. If you use the Dogtrat's, the YS600, that's the large one, and the YS300 is the one for small dogs. That has the algorithm built into it so that it is not going to set off if a dog near them is barking, and will also have the 30-second delay. It will have settings typically 1 through 10. The best thing about the bark collar is the bark collars are great if your dog is barking, especially if they have free rein and access to the backyard and they're barking and you're getting complaints from the neighbors. Or if you live in an apartment and your dog only barks when you're not there and you have to get the dog to stop because you're being threatened with eviction, that is really a good time when these bark collars will come in handy. The big difference between the bark collar and then using this to stop the barking is that the bark collar is going to be consistent. People have a tendency to not be consistent. You may step outside with the remote, not hear them bark, and then they're going to bark, and you're not going to catch the behavior. Whereas if you're using the bark collar, it will catch it when it happens. So if the only thing you need the electronic collar for is to stop a dog from barking, especially when you're not there, then that would be the answer for you. If you have any questions, reach out to a trainer. They'll help to explain to you the benefits as well as the risks, like we talked about, of using an electronic bark collar. Now we're going to talk about remote control electronic collars. Now this video is not to determine whether or not people think that these are mean to use or not. I am here to talk to you about what they are used for and how they are beneficial in the training world. We use these primarily for two things: what I call environmental corrections, as well as pack leader corrections. The benefit of using an electronic collar for a pack leader correction is that the pack leader is getting credit for the correction. So if we're working with a dog, for example, we're working with a dog that's off leash, this gives us the ability to issue a correction. With this specific collar, we can correct the dog anywhere within 3/4 of a mile. Doesn't matter how many walls you're between or anything like that. The other thing to keep in mind with these is you do get what you pay for. So if you have a cheaper low-end collar, the transmitter and the receiver don't always talk. And so you might be pressing the button and it's not working. So you're turning it up thinking that the dog's not feeling it, it's not doing anything. Turn it up, and all of a sudden they do decide to talk, and then you issue a stimulation that's way too powerful for your dog. So if you're going to commit to using an electronic collar that has a remote, it is important that you make sure, first of all, you speak with a trainer if you don't know how to use them, and do your research. Because yes, you can traumatize your dog if you use these incorrectly, but if they're used correctly, they can be very valuable tools. Keep in mind that movie star dogs are all trained with electronic collars, as well as hunting dogs, because these dogs need to be able to be corrected from a distance. And these collars have correction levels that go so low that even you wouldn't feel it. You can put it on your neck, you can put it on your arm. Say, for example, level 15, this has 127 different settings to give you an idea. Level 15, I don't even feel it. So it has stimulations that are so low that we don't even feel them. And basically what we do is we use these to find a level that's just enough to get the dog to change their mind and to stop doing the behavior that they're wanting to do. So that's what these would be used for as far as pack leader corrections. It gives us the ability to issue corrections from a distance. It also gives us the ability to issue corrections that if we have, let's say, for example, we're dealing with a dog that's very aggressive or a dog that's very headstrong, and our leash corrections and all of our other corrections aren't working because it's just not enough of a correction. These corrections can surpass what we're able to get with other training tools. The other thing that we use these for is what I call environmental corrections. Dogs are like children. So if a dog is told not to do something, for example, to stay away from a rattlesnake, as soon as you're not looking, what are they going to do? They're going to go look and try and find a rattlesnake because they want to see what you told them not to see. So what we do is, the way we use these for environmental corrections is we will set them up, we'll put them on the collar. They won't have ever typically worn a collar before, so they'll have no idea what it is. the human is issued the direction of not issuing any types of corrections. They're not allowed verbal corrections, leash corrections, nothing. They basically go on for a walk, and we create a mock walk when we're doing our rattlesnake avoidance training. The way we do our rattlesnake training with Perfect Pooch is we have a small little metal enclosure with a metal screen mesh, which ensures the dogs can safely walk right up to the snake, and they can go nose to nose with the snake without the risk of being bitten. Then we issue stimulation with the collar. It is higher than we would normally use because when we are dealing with rattlesnakes, it's important that the dog gets the message that these rattlesnakes are bad. And I promise you the stimulation that they get from the collar is going to be 100 times better than the bite that they would get from the snake. And so when they feel that stimulation that comes from this collar and they are nose to nose focusing sight, sound, and smell on that snake, they think that the snake created that, and then they want nothing to do with the snake. And then when you take that dog out and they come across that smell, they hear the sound of the rattle, or they see the rattlesnake, they're going to remember the stimulation that they experienced, that they think the snake created, and they're going to want nothing to do with it. Hey everybody, so if you were wondering how I got Winnie to stay so still to model all of these tools, basically what I did was I took Winnie's favorite thing, which is a tennis ball, and then I placed the tool on her, and then I kept her focus wherever I wanted it by aiming the tennis ball. As I came in, guided around, and then what you didn't see was as soon as I was done, I said, okay. And she got rewarded by going to grab her ball. Good girl, Winnie. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like to support us even further, please hit the subscribe button, hit the alert button so that you'll be alerted every time we post a video. Like the videos and tell your friends. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one.